All right, next up, an interesting fact check from the AP. Mass formation psychosis, an unfounded theory spreading online suggesting millions of people have been hypnotized into believing mainstream ideas to combat COVID-19. You mean like when they told us that if we just got vaccinated, we wouldn't get COVID? Remember that? Remember when they told us that if we just got this little card right here that I have, remember they told us that if we just got this damn card, we'd be protected from COVID? And I got vaccinated less than 3 months ago, and today I sit here with effing COVID? Please. To be fair, I never really believed them anyway, but I'm a little bit bitter. I'm gonna milk this sickness for all it's worth. I'm a little bit bitter. Maybe the AP can do a fact check on whether vaccinated people can get COVID. But no, they instead did it on the idea of mass formation psychosis, and they say, psychology experts say, the concept is not supported by the evidence. Well, so interesting fun facts that I want to lay on you guys before we read this article. Fun fact number 1, the American Psychological Association, as I have covered on this channel, a couple months ago, maybe, issued a massive resolution in which they apologized for their centuries of support for systemic racism. So that tells you about the psychology experts in the American Psychological Association. In the American Psychiatric Association, it's even more interesting because the American Psychiatric Association was literally one of the main organizations that was lobbying the Biden administration for vaccine mandates. So I don't know where the AP is getting their psychology experts from, but let's read this here fact check and find out. An unfounded theory taking root online suggests millions of people have been hypnotized into believing mainstream ideas about COVID-19, including steps to combat it, such as testing and vaccination. In widely shared social media posts this week, efforts to combat the disease have been dismissed with just 3 words: mass formation psychosis. I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure healthy people spending hours in line to get a virus test is mass formation psychosis in action, reads one tweet that was liked more than 22,000 times. The term gained attention after it was floated by Dr. Robert Malone on the Joe Rogan Experience on December 31st. Malone is a scientist who once researched mRNA technology, but is now a vocal skeptic of COVID-19 vaccines that use it. Wasn't he the inventor of the mRNA vaccine? The AP is saying that Dr. Robert Malone was just a scientist who maybe sometimes researched. Maybe I make this a little bit bigger. Hang on. That's a little bit better. Okay. So the AP is saying that Dr. Robert Malone is just some guy who once researched mRNA technology. Didn't he invent it? Just some guy that, back in the day did some research on some stuff. Please, AP. But psychology experts say the concept described by Malone is not supported by evidence. Okay, so they haven't even identified who their psychology experts are. Here's a look at the facts. Claim. The concept of mass formation psychosis explains why millions of people believe in a mainstream COVID-19 narrative and trust the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I trusted the safety and efficacy of vaccines, and look where it got me, with COVID streaming on the internet, we barely being able to talk. I'm not bitter or anything. I'm not bitter. Malone highlighted the unfounded theory on a podcast hosted by comedian and commentator Joe Rogan. During the episode, Malone cast doubt on COVID-19 vaccine safety and claimed the mass psychosis had resulted in a third of the population basically being hypnotized into believing what Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, and mainstream news outlets say. Malone went on to say that the phenomenon explained Nazi Germany. When you have a society that has been decoupled from each other and has free-floating anxiety in a sense that things don't make sense, you can't understand it, and then their attention gets focused by a leader or a series of events on one small point, just like hypnosis, they are literally becoming hypnotized and can be led anywhere, Malone said. He claims such people will not allow the narrative to be questioned. Crediting a professor in Belgium, Malone also said in December a blog post that this mass hypnosis explains millions of people becoming captivated by the dominant narrative concerning the safety and effectiveness of genetic vaccines. Now we're getting into the psychology experts. Oh, excellent. We're finally finding some experts. Hang on, guys. Let me just take a sip with my fucking COVID fucking throat. My vaccinated COVID throat. To my knowledge, there is no evidence whatsoever for this concept, said J. Van Bavel, an assistant professor of psychology and neuroscience at New York University, who recently co-authored a book on group identities. Van Bavel said he had never encountered the phrase mass formation psychosis in his years of research, nor could he find it in any peer-reviewed literature. So he's taking umbrage with the phrase. He's taking umbrage with the phrase, not actually with the concept, with the phrase. Wow. The concept has no academic credibility, Stephen Reicher, a social psychology professor at University of St. Andrews in the UK, wrote in an email to the Associated Press. The term does not appear in the American Psychological Association's Dictionary of Psychology. See, look at the American Psychological Association, which recently issued a dramatic declaration that they apologize for all systemic racism. Psychosis is a term that refers to the conditions that involve some disconnect from reality. According to a National Institutes of Health estimate, about 3% of people experience some form of psychosis at some time in their lives. Richard McNally, a professor of clinical psychology at Harvard University, wrote in an email that people who support COVID-19 vaccines and public health guidance are not delusional. Rather, they are fully responsive to arguments and evidence adduced by the relevant scientific experts. That seems like a pretty broad generalization to me, but okay. Health officials have found COVID-19 vaccines to be safe and effective, especially in terms of protecting against serious illness. I suppose I should be thankful that I got vaccinated and then got COVID within 3 months. I suppose I should be thankful for that vaccine. Even though my husband, who is not vaccinated, got better in like a day and a half. I'm just saying. Been sicker a little bit longer, even though I was vaccinated. The description of mass formation psychosis, offered by Malone, resembles discredited concepts such as mob mentality and group mind. Those are not, dude, I am sorry. Those are not discredited concepts. I say this as an actual psychologist. Just as a reminder, YouTube, I actually do have a PhD in psychology, as it turns out. The concepts of mob mentality and group mind or groupthink are not effing discredited, please. According to John, a social psychologist at the University of Sussex in the UK, who studies collective behavior, the idea suggests that when people form part of a psychological crowd, they lose their identities and their self-control, they become suggestible, and primitive instincts, impulses dominate. The notion has been discredited by decades of research on crowd behavior. No reputable psychologist agrees with these ideas now. That's not true. No, 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 no. Multiple experts told the AP that while there is evidence that groups can shape and influence one's behaviors, that people can and do believe falsehoods that are put forward by the leader of a group. These concepts do not involve the masses experiencing psychosis or hypnosis. So essentially what we're seeing in this is essentially what we're seeing in this is that they're taking more umbrage with the term that they're using than the actual concepts they're describing. They're like, you're not using the right words to define this concept. So we're going to attack the words that you're using rather than the concept that you're articulating. Deborah Evans says, I agree with Carlin as a PhD in experimental psych. Any other psychology PhDs in the chat want to speak up? Stephen J. Lynn, a psychology professor at Binghamton University in New York, said Malone's argument that a group can literally become hypnotized and can be led anywhere is premised on a myth about hypnosis. His claims represent a serious misunderstanding of hypnosis and doubles down on the popular misconceptions that hypnosis somehow transforms people into our mindless robots who think what the hypnotist wants them to think and do the hypnotist's bidding. Well, that's true enough. Like, that's not the way hypnosis works. But I also don't think that's what he was suggesting. You can reject like things when you're hypnotized, and not everyone in the population can actually be hypnotized. Like, you can reject certain requests or things when you're hypnotized. You just, like, your defenses are down, so you're not as inclined to. But that's not how this works. My gosh. The scientifically established fact is that people can easily resist and even oppose suggestions. Well, that's true, but what we're talking about here is suggestions being offered over and over and over and over and over and over and over again across every source of information they trust across the last 2 years. And at some point, this is not like being hypnotized like you might see like a hypnosis show at like your county fair or whatever, and everyone goes up on the stage and they sit in the chairs and then they do the funny things and all this stuff. Like, that's one time where they get a suggestion, right? What we're talking about is a ginormous group of people who are getting the same suggestions over and 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 over again from every source of information that they trust over the course of years. At some point, you're going to wear down. And a lot of people have worn down. So what they're describing in this fact check is not the same thing that Dr. Malone was describing on that episode. Sorry. Before the concept of mass formation psychosis took off in recent days, it had percolated online in recent months. So a little bit more, but you can see, like, I think that this is propaganda. Then that's not to say that I necessarily 100% buy into the idea that half of the population is under hypnosis at all. I'm not saying that. But I do think it's very clear that there is a large segment of the population who are only operating on confirmation bias, who are only taking in information from sources that they already agree with to reach conclusions that they've already drawn. And that's true on both effing sides. And until we can start living in the land of reality again, and reality in this case being that I'm living proof that vaccinated people can get effing COVID. Like, until we can start living in that type of reality, I just don't know what to tell you, man. Don't know what to tell you. I really do think that things are going to get worse before they get better. I'm blackpilling more and more every day. And the reason I'm blackpilling is I'm watching people who used to be like of sound mind, like friends of mine, people not old lefty friends, but like people who's less than 3 months ago. Let me ask you guys this. Let me ask you guys this in the chat. Like, I am watching people who were normal 3 months ago slowly starting to become unhinged from reality. I think more and more people are losing it, and not just people on the left and not just people who buy into the COVID like narrative. I think a lot of people are getting pushed way too far, and I'm starting to question, like, how many people especially on online, on Twitter, on the social media sites, including influencers, how many people are going a little bit crazy? How many people are going crazy? Is this something that you guys have noticed? I even see influencers bickering back and forth. Scott Adams and James Lindsay are now bickering, and this hurts me on a deeply personal level because I actually really do value both of them. I have people in my life who I would have considered a friend just a couple months ago now acting goddamn insane. I just don't know what to do anymore. This is why I'm retreating into my locals, because I feel like I have no safe spaces left. And I really am blackpilling with where the world's going. But, maybe. And you know what? Like, let's listen, to be honest, stuff like this doesn't actually help much. Do you guys hear this story? Stuff like this doesn't help. The latest and greatest in COVID insanity. Texas mother is charged after 14-year-old child is found in the trunk of her car at drive-through COVID testing center. This is the level that we have descended to, the level of madness. Naruto just started the stream and don't know if you've covered it. I already wanted to say Mannequin Lives Matter. Naruto, I almost covered it. I did. It was on the list, and then I just had too many other stories. But Naruto in my locals community gave an awesome news article that almost made it into FW News this week about the Taliban. The Taliban is ordering that mannequins be decapitated because mannequins are idols. Maybe Naruto, maybe I'll cover it this week on one of the live streams. Because it is a really funny story, actually. The Taliban is ordering that mannequins get decapitated, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, Naruto. Check out this story. This is how insane the media has driven people, like normal people. A Texas mother faces child endangerment charges after forcing her 14-year-old son to ride in the trunk of her car to get a COVID test at a drive-through site. Hang on, sorry, throat. Sarah Beam, 42, from the Cypress Fairbanks area near Houston, allegedly packed the teen in a trunk as she drove to the testing site at Ken Pidgeon Stadium after he tested positive for the virus on January 3rd to get another test. So, mom's son tests positive for virus. Instead of behaving like a normal mother, she insists the son quarantine by getting in the trunk of their car and going to the testing site. This is how insane the media has driven people. Cypress Fairbanks ISD Police Department issued a warrant for her arrest on Friday. Police said Beam pulled to the giant tent set up at Falcon Road when Bevan Gordon, the health services director on site, heard a noise inside her trunk. Beam, who had worked at the Sci-Fair district as a teacher. She's a teacher. She is a teacher. Beam, who worked at the Sci-Fair district as a teacher since 2011, told Gordon that her son had tested positive for the virus and had to be quarantined, according to the court affidavit. She told Gordon she placed him in the trunk in order to protect herself from the virus and wanted to get him an additional test, the police said. And can we talk about the fact that she apparently didn't think there was anything wrong with driving up to a testing site in which she was going to have to show the people at the testing site that she had locked her son in the trunk of a car? She thought everyone would be totally fine with this. She's a teacher. These are the people that are responsible for educating your children. Locking a 14-year-old in the trunk of their car to quarantine them. Police did not say whether the mom or her unidentified son were vaccinated. I'm going to bet they were. When she popped the trunk, Gordon found the boy laying down inside the vehicle and told Beam she could not receive a COVID-19 test until the boy was seated safely in the back seat. Surveillance footage obtained by the Sci-Fair ISD PD reportedly showed the 14-year-old exiting the trunk and climbing into the back seat. The teen was not harmed during the incident. Beam recently worked as a teacher in the district, but is currently on administrative leave. One would hope so. One would hope so, but no, we're not engaging in any insane behavior at all. Hey, good thing China is weaponizing brain control just in case you weren't scared enough by the world going insane all around us at any given time. Let's listen to what China's doing. Guys, if you have not mounted that like button, please make sure you do so. China is developing terrifying brain control weapons, which could be used to paralyze and control its enemies and its own people, a report says. Washington has reportedly sanctioned Beijing's Academy of Military Medical Sciences and 11 other research firms using biotechnology. One of the weapons reportedly being developed is purported brain control weaponry, according to the Washington Times. I just wanted, before we keep going with this article, give a hat tip to Awesome Human, who is the one who posted this in my locals for me. I greatly appreciate it. Jenny's getting inky with it, says, and her son was willing to get in the trunk. If she raised her son to be so submissive, think of her students. Well, we can't blame a 14-year-old for getting in the trunk of a car because their logic function of their brain is not fully developed. Okay? So we have to cut the 14-year-old some slack. Doesn't have the logic function of his brain yet. Hopefully, he will learn himself a lesson. The Chinese institutes were blacklisted by America's Commerce Department last week. Well, that's something, I suppose. The government department did not go into detail about the sinister weapons. However, 2019 military documents seen by the news outlet did offer some insight. China wants to paralyze and control the opponent by attacking the enemy's will to resist. Huh. Imagine that. A major government is developing weapons to paralyze and control the opponent by attacking the enemy's will to exist. And we know they've been doing this for at least a couple of years. Imagine that. The weapon would not be used to kill or destroy bodies, the documents reportedly state. After being placed on the entity list, American firms can no longer export or transfer goods to Chinese institutions without a license. This comes amid government warnings to U.S. firms that China is trying to obtain American technology to take over key sectors, including biotech. Unfortunately, the People's Republic of China is choosing to use these technologies to pursue control over its people and repression of members of ethnic and religious minority groups. We cannot allow U.S. commodities, technologies, and software that support medical science and biotechnical innovation to be diverted towards use contrary to U.S. national security. Well, one would think. One would think. Nothing to worry about, guys. China's just trying to take over people's brains. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, check this out. In 2019, a mind-reading computer chip was revealed at the World Intelligence Congress in China. The breakthrough device is called Brain Talker and allows a person to control a computer with just their brain waves. It is not implicitly stated how the brain chip will be worn, but most BCIs are currently worn outside the body and not actually inside a user's brain. The researcher says brain-computer interfaces hold promising future. The Brain Talker chip advances BCI technology, allowing it to become more portable, wearable, and accessible to the general public. You know, whatever. Kevin says, watch The End of Europe on YouTube with Douglas Murray. Do I really want to, Kevin? Or would it just scare the hell out of me? Yeah, Nat D, Illuminati mind control. We are so fucked. Guys, the very best thing you can do, mark my words. Well, move to New Hampshire would probably be the very best thing you can do. But other than that, I really think that the very best thing you can do is find communities of your people, man. You know what? Here's the thing. Get square with what makes you happy. Get square with the type of person you are. Be honest with yourself. Have some tough conversations with yourself about who you are and what you like and what you don't like, and find other people who like the same things you do. And even if you like weird stuff, I promise you, there are people out there who will like the same things you do. Find your people, find your communities, because I am absolutely convinced that most of the world is going insane and that all we have left are the people that we choose to surround ourselves with. I feel really good that I'm in New Hampshire. I love the community that I'm involved with in New Hampshire with the Libertarians and the Free State Project. I love them. I think it's great. I feel really good. We do things in real life, not on the internet. Makes all the difference, by the way. Get off the computer, get off of social media, because honestly, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and you want to make sure you're surrounded by good people when that happens.